The Velnarix Armada stretched across the darkness of space like a great metal ocean. 312 warships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under distant starlight. They had traveled far to reach this small corner of the galaxy, and now their target waited just ahead, a tiny blue world called Earth. High Overlord Zethrak stood at the center of his command deck, his forearms folded behind his back. His gray skin was marked with the scars of 17 conquests, and his yellow eyes held the cold confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. Around him, his officers worked at their stations, preparing for what they all believed would be an easy victory. "Show me the target world again," Zethrak commanded. The main display flickered and revealed Earth, a sphere of blue oceans and green lands wrapped in white clouds. It looked peaceful. It looked weak. "A primitive species," said Subcommander Vilas, stepping forward with a data tablet. "They call themselves humans. Our scouts have studied their broadcasts for many cycles. They fight among themselves constantly. They have no unified government. Their technology is crude." Zethrak made a sound of disgust. "And yet they dare to exist in space that could belong to the Dominion. They have no warships recorded in any galactic database," Vilas continued. "No defensive stations. No orbital weapons. They have only recently learned to leave their own world." The other officers laughed. This was too easy. The Velnarix had crushed 17 species before this, and each one had been stronger than these humans appeared to be. Some had fought back with great fleets. Others had begged for mercy. In the end, all had fallen before the might of the Dominion. "We will be done before the next cycle," one captain boasted. "I will claim the largest continent for my house." "I want the coastal regions," another said. "The water will be useful for our colonies." Zethrak allowed them their excitement. They had earned the right to dream of conquest. But something small and quiet bothered him, a thought he could not name. The humans had achieved spaceflight. They had sent machines to other worlds in their system. And yet they had no defenses at all. He pushed the thought away. It did not matter. No species could stand against 300 Velnarix warships, far away, on the bridge of a ship that did not officially exist. Admiral Catherine Morrison received the news she had been dreading for 20 years. "They're here," said Lieutenant Samantha Blake, looking up from her console. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. 300-plus warships just entered the outer system. Velnarix signatures confirmed. Catherine stood slowly from her command chair. She was 54 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, hoping it would never come. "Time to Earth?" she asked. "At their current speed, approximately 6 days." 6 days. Catherine looked around her bridge at the men and women who had trained in secret, who had given up normal lives to serve on ships the public did not know existed. They were afraid. She could see it. But they were also ready. "Send word to the other ships," Catherine said. "Operation Silent Thunder is now active. All vessels move to intercept positions. Maintain full stealth until my command." Commander Daniel Cruz, her tactical officer, stepped to her side. He was a tall man with a calm face that rarely showed emotion. But Catherine had known him for 15 years, and she could see the tension in his jaw. 57 ships against 300, he said quietly. "Those are not good numbers." "Numbers aren't everything, Daniel. You know that better than anyone." He nodded slowly. "I know. I just wish we had more time. We've had 30 years. It will have to be enough." 30 years ago, humanity had detected the first alien signals. They came from deep space communications between species that had never heard of Earth. At first, there was excitement. Humanity was not alone. But as scientists decoded more signals, The excitement turned to fear. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. It was full of empires that conquered and enslaved, that saw weakness as an invitation to attack. Earth's governments had made a choice. They would not announce themselves to the galaxy. They would not send friendly messages into the void. Instead, they would prepare. In secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and beneath lunar craters, humanity built a fleet designed for one purpose: to make any invader regret. The day they came to Sol, the USS Resolute was the crown of that effort. She was not beautiful like the alien ships in intercepted images. She was brutal, angular, covered in armor plates and weapon arrays. She looked like exactly what she was, a machine built by a species that had spent its entire history fighting itself and had finally found something else to fight. Catherine walked to the main viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Velnorics were coming, confident in their power, certain of their victory. They had studied humanity's public face, the broadcasts, the satellites, the primitive rockets. They thought they knew what humans were. They were wrong. "Admiral," Blake called out, "I'm intercepting Velnoric's communications. They're already dividing up Earth, assigning continents to their noble houses." Catherine felt a cold anger settle in her chest. These aliens had looked at her world, her people, and seen nothing but easy prey. They would learn the truth soon enough. "Let them make their plans," she said. "It will make their disappointment even greater." The Resolute moved through the darkness without a sound, without a trace. 56 other ships did the same, spreading out through the solar system like ghosts. They carried the hopes of 8 billion people who did not know they existed, who slept peacefully on Earth believing they were safe. They were safe. Catherine would make sure of it. "All hands," she announced over the shipwide channel. "This is Admiral Morrison. The enemy is here. They think we are weak. They think we are primitive. They think this will be easy." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We are going to prove them wrong. We have trained for this. We have bled for this. And when this is over, the galaxy will know that Earth is not a world to be conquered. It is a world that conquers back." The bridge crew straightened in their seats, fear replaced by determination. The Resolute continued its silent journey toward the enemy, invisible and patient. The trap was set. Now they only had to wait. 4 days had passed since the Velnoric's Armada entered the Sol system. 4 days of traveling through empty space, past frozen rocks and distant moons, and they had seen nothing. No ships, no stations, no resistance of any kind. High Overlord Zethrak stood before the great viewport of his flagship, watching the stars drift slowly by. Behind him, his officers worked in comfortable silence. There was nothing to report. There was nothing to fear. "We have passed the gas giants," Sub-Commander Vilas announced. "Entering the inner system now." Still no contact. "Of course not," Zethrak replied. "The humans have nothing to send against us. They are probably hiding in their cities, praying to whatever gods they worship." His officers laughed, but Vilas did not join them. She'd have been watching the sensor readings for days, and something about them bothered her. The space around them was too empty, too quiet. In her experience, even primitive species tried to fight back. They sent desperate attacks, futile but brave. These humans had done nothing at all. "Perhaps they do not know we are here," she suggested carefully. Zethrak turned to look at her with his cold yellow eyes. "They know. Our scouts have detected their observation posts on the outer planets. They have seen us. They simply cannot do anything about it." Vilas wanted to believe him. She wanted to share the confidence of her fellow officers. But a small voice in her mind kept asking questions she could not answer. If the humans knew they were coming, why were they so calm? Why had there been no transmissions of panic, no emergency broadcasts? No signs of evacuation. She kept her doubts to herself. Questioning the High Overlord was not wise. Across the vast distance of space, Admiral Catherine Morrison watched the enemy approach on her tactical display. The Velnorix fleet was now past Jupiter, moving steadily toward Mars. They were exactly where she wanted them. "They're getting confident," Commander Cruz observed. "Their formation is spreading out. They think they have nothing to worry about." Catherine nodded. "Good. The more relaxed they are, the harder the surprise will hit." Lieutenant Blake looked up from her console. "Admiral, I'm still intercepting their communications. They're joking about us, calling us dirt dwellers and cave animals. One of their captains just claimed his crew would conquer Earth before dinner." "Let them joke," Catherine said. "Laughter will turn to screams soon enough." She turned to face her crew. They had been silent and tense for 4 days, maintaining perfect stealth discipline while the enemy drifted past them. It was hard work, staying invisible. Every system had to be carefully managed, every energy signature hidden. But they had done it. 57 human warships surrounded the Velnorix Armada like wolves around a herd of sheep. And the sheep had no idea. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb climbed up from the lower decks. His uniform stained with grease and his eyes tired. He had been working without rest to keep the stealth systems running perfectly. "How are we doing, Marcus?" Catherine asked. "Holding steady, Admiral. The cloak is stable. But I have to say, it feels strange to just sit here while they fly past us. Patience wins battles, not just firepower." Marcus smiled weakly. "I know. I just want to see their faces when they realize what's happening. You'll see it soon. I promise." In one of the Resolute's fighter bays, Pilot Officer Ryan Torres sat in the cockpit of his attack craft, running through system checks for the 100th time. He was 26 years old young for a squadron leader, but he had earned his position through skill and determination. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. Around him, the other pilots waited in their own crafts. None of them spoke. They had been sitting in launch position for hours, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. The waiting was the hardest part. Ryan thought about his family back on Earth, his mother in her small house in Nevada, his younger sister who was studying to be a doctor. They had no idea where he was or what he was about to do. They thought he worked on a classified research station. They would never know the truth unless something went wrong. He promised himself that nothing would go wrong. He would fight, and he would win, and he would go home. Back on the Velnorix flagship, Zethrak was growing bored. He had expected at least some entertainment from this conquest, perhaps a desperate human fleet rushing to meet him, or frightened leaders begging for mercy over communications. But there was nothing, just silence and empty space. "Perhaps they died out," one of his captains joked. "Perhaps a disease killed them all and we came for nothing. Then we claimed their world and their resources," Zethrak replied. "Either way, the Dominion wins." He returned to his command chair and settled in for the final approach. In 2 more days, they would reach Earth. In 3 days, the conquest would be complete. He would add another world to his list of victories, and the humans would become another forgotten species in the Dominion's long history. Sub-Commander. Vilas watched him sit down, and she felt her unease grow stronger. She walked to the sensor station and looked at the readings herself. Everything appeared normal. Empty space in all directions. No energy signatures. No ship movements. Nothing. And yet, "Run another deep scan," she ordered the sensor officer quietly. "Maximum range. Maximum sensitivity." The officer looked at her with confusion, but obeyed. The results came back the same, nothing but rocks and radiation and the cold void of space. Violet stared at the display for a long moment. She could not explain why, but she felt like they were being watched. Like something was out there in the darkness, waiting. She thought about saying something to Zethrak, But what would she say? That she had a feeling? That the empty space felt too empty? He would laugh at her. He might even remove her from command for showing weakness. So she stayed silent and watched the stars drift by, never knowing that 20 kilometers away, hidden behind a cloak of human engineering, the USS Resolute was matching their course and speed. Close enough to see the lights in their windows. On the Resolute's bridge, Catherine Morrison checked the time. 18 hours until the optimal engagement position. 18 hours until she gave the order that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Rest while you can, she told her crew. Tomorrow we make history. The stars continued to shine, cold and indifferent. The Valnorix Armada continued to advance, blind and confident. And in the darkness between them, humanity waited with weapons ready and hearts full of determination. The silence would not last much longer. The moment came without warning. The Valnorix Armada was cruising through the space between Jupiter and Mars. Their 300 ships spread across thousands of kilometers. Officers were changing shifts. Crew members were eating meals. Some were even sleeping. After 5 days of traveling through empty space, they had stopped expecting anything to happen. Then the darkness in front of them rippled like water, disturbed by a stone. Subcommander Vilas was the first to see it. She was standing at the sensor station, still haunted by her nameless fears, when the readings suddenly went insane. Energy signatures appeared from nowhere. Mass detectors screamed warnings. And directly ahead of the Armada, something huge was becoming visible. Contact! She shouted. Contact directly ahead. The bridge erupted into chaos. Officers ran to their stations. Alarms began to wail. High Overlord Zethrak jumped from his chair and stared at the main viewport with his yellow eyes wide. A ship was appearing out of nothing. It came into view slowly, like a monster rising from deep water. First the outline, then the details, then the full terrifying reality of what they were facing. The vessel was enormous, larger than any Valnorix battleship. But its size was not what made Zethrak's blood run cold. It was the design. No-rig ships were elegant. Curved hulls and flowing lines, built by species that valued beauty alongside function. This human ship was nothing like that. It was brutal, angular, covered in thick armor plates that looked like they could survive a collision with a planet. Weapon arrays lined every surface: cannons, missile launchers, point defense systems. There were hundreds of them. The ship looked like it had been built by a species that expected to fight every day of its existence. It looked like it had been designed by engineers who knew what war really meant. Painted on the side in massive letters was a name: USS Resolute. Below the name was an image: a human fist crushing a cluster of stars. What is that? Someone whispered. No one answered. They were all too shocked to speak. On the Resolute's bridge, Admiral Catherine Morrison stood calmly before her viewport, watching the Valnorix Armada through her own eyes for the first time. 300 ships, she thought. They really brought everything they had. Decloaking complete, Lieutenant Blake reported. We are fully visible. The enemy has definitely seen us. Their fleet has stopped, Commander Cruz added, checking his tactical display. All 300 ships are holding position. No weapons fire. No movement at all. Catherine allowed herself a small smile. They don't know what to do. This isn't in their playbook. She turned to Blake. Open a channel. All frequencies. I want every ship in that armada to hear this. Blake worked her console quickly. Channel open, Admiral. Catherine straightened her uniform and stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice was calm and cold and carried the weight of 8 billion people behind it. Valnorix Armada. This is Admiral Catherine Morrison of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You have entered sovereign, human space without permission. You were not invited here. Your intentions are hostile, and we do not take kindly to threats." She paused to let the translation systems carry her words across the enemy fleet. "You have one chance. Turn your ships around and leave this system. Return to your space and tell your leaders that Earth is not a world to be conquered. Do this, and you will live. Refuse, and you will die here, in the dark, far from home." Another pause. On the Velnarik's flagship, Zethrak listened to the human's words with growing rage. How dare this primitive creature speak to him this way? How dare a single ship threaten the might of the Dominion? "One ship," he growled. "They have one ship, and they think they can give us orders?" But even as he spoke, his officers were reading their sensor data with pale faces. The readings from the human vessel made no sense. Energy output that should have been impossible. Armor density that exceeded any known material. Weapon systems that did not match anything in the galactic database. "I Overlord," Violet said quietly. "Our sensors cannot identify their weapons. We have no record of this technology." "Then our records are incomplete," Zethrak snapped. "This changes nothing. One ship cannot defeat an armada. Send an attack group. 20 destroyers. Blow that ugly thing out of the sky and show these humans what happens to those who defy the Dominion." Violet hesitated. "Sir, perhaps we should study them first. Learn what we are facing before we—" "I gave an order." Violet fell silent. The command went out, and 20 Velnorik's destroyers broke formation, accelerating toward the lone human ship with weapons charging. On the Resolute, Blake tracked their approach. 20 enemy ships incoming, Admiral. They're powering weapons." Cruz looked at Catherine with a question in his eyes. She nodded once. "All batteries," Cruz announced calmly. "Select targets and fire at will." The Resolute responded with a sound like thunder. Her main cannons fired first massive electromagnetic accelerators that hurled metal slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. Then the missile tubes opened, sending waves of warheads shrieking toward the enemy. Point defense lasers activated, creating a web of deadly light around the ship. The first Velnorik's destroyer simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of debris. The second destroyer lost its front half to a railgun round that punched through shields like they were paper. The third and fourth exploded together when a missile found their ammunition storage. The attack lasted 11 seconds. When it was over, all 20 destroyers were gone. On the Velnorik's flagship, complete silence fell. Officers stared at their screens, unable to process what they had just witnessed. 20 warships, each crewed by hundreds of soldiers, destroyed in the time it took to draw breath. Zethrak felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. "That's impossible," he whispered. "That's not possible?" Violet watched the debris field expand where the destroyers had been. Her earlier doubts now screamed in her mind like alarms. They had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at humanity's public face and seen weakness. But the truth was something else entirely. The truth was that humans had been hiding, waiting, preparing. She turned to Zethrak with horror in her eyes. "What if there are more?" she asked. "What if that ship is not alone?" As if answering her question, Admiral Morrison's voice came through the speakers again. "That was your one chance," she said. "Now let me show you what you're really facing." Across the battle space, the darkness began to ripple again. One point of distortion. Then another. Then dozens. 56 more human warships began to appear, rising from nothing like ghosts made solid. They surrounded the Velnorik's armada in a sphere of metal and firepower, their weapons already aimed and ready. Zethrak looked at the tactical display and felt his confidence shatter completely. They were surrounded. They were outgunned. And the predator had become the prey. "All ships," Catherine commanded, "engage at will. The battle for Earth had begun. Space became fire. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Railgun slugs tore through the void at impossible speeds. Missiles streaked toward targets in swarms. Energy beams cut across the darkness like the fingers of angry gods. And everywhere they touched, Velnoric's ships died. High Overlord Zethrak gripped the arms of his command chair as his flagship shook from a nearby explosion. The tactical display in front of him was a nightmare of red warning lights. His beautiful Armada, 300 strong, was being torn apart. "Return fire!" he screamed. "All ships, return fire!" The Velnoric's fleet tried to obey. Plasma cannons charged and released. Torpedo bays emptied their contents. But the human ships were moving now, dancing through the battle space with a grace that seemed impossible for vessels so large and brutal. They dodged, they weaved, they used the debris of destroyed ships as cover, and their armor, even when Velnoric's weapons found their mark. The human ships simply kept coming. Plasma splashed against thick metal plates and did nothing. Torpedoes detonated against hulls and left only scorch marks. "Their armor is too strong," a weapons officer cried. "Our cannons cannot penetrate." Sub-Commander Vilas watched in horror as another 3 Dominion cruisers exploded in quick succession. The humans were not just fighting, they were hunting. Each human ship seemed to have chosen specific targets, working together to isolate and destroy them one by one. This was not the desperate defense of a primitive species. This was the calculated destruction of a military force that knew exactly what it was doing. In the fighter bays of the USS Resolute, Pilot Officer Ryan Torres finally received the order he had been waiting for. "All squadrons launch. Clear the debris field and engage enemy fighters." Ryan's hands moved automatically, years of training taking over. His attack craft shot out of the bay and into chaos. All around him, the battle raged, massive warships exchanging fire, explosions blooming like flowers, debris spinning through the void. "Stay in formation," he called to his squadron. "Watch your wingmates. Don't get separated." A group of Velnoric's fighters appeared ahead, their sleek shapes looking almost delicate compared to the angular human craft. They opened fire with energy weapons, green bolts streaking across the darkness. Ryan rolled his ship hard, dodging the attack, then lined up his own weapons and pulled the trigger. Human fighters carried kinetic weapons, rapid-fire cannons that threw hundreds of metal rounds per second. The first Velnoric's fighter came apart like paper. "Got one," his wingmate shouted. "Stay focused. There are more coming." The dogfight became a swirling dance of death. Human and Velnoric's pilots fought with everything they had, neither side willing to give ground. But slowly, surely, the humans began to win. Their ships were tougher. Their weapons hit harder. And they fought with a fury that seemed to surprise the enemy at every turn. On the Resolute's bridge, Admiral Catherine Morrison directed the battle with calm precision. Her eyes moved constantly across the tactical display, finding opportunities, identifying threats. "The Defiant is taking heavy fire," Commander Cruz reported. "Their shields are failing. Tell the Vigilant and the Steadfast to provide cover, and have the Resolute move to support." The great ship turned, her engines flaring, and charged toward the struggling vessel. Velnoric's ships tried to block the way, but the Resolute simply smashed through them, her armored bow sending one cruiser spinning away in pieces. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb called from below decks. "Admiral, we're running hot. The main cannons need a cooling cycle." "How long?" 90 seconds. "You have 60. Make it work." Marcus cursed under his breath, but got to work. Catherine trusted him. He had never failed her before. On the Velnoric's flagship, Zethrak watched his fleet die. More than 100 ships were already gone, destroyed, disabled, or drifting without power. The humans had lost perhaps 10, and even some of those were still fighting despite heavy damage. "We have to retreat," Vilas urged him. "High Overlord, we cannot win this battle. If we stay, we will all die." Zethrak's pride burned at the suggestion, but he could not argue with what his eyes told him. The humans had outplayed them completely. This entire attack had been a trap, and his armada had walked straight into it. How? He asked. How did they hide an entire fleet? How did they develop such weapons? The intelligence said they were primitive. The intelligence was wrong, Vilas replied. Or perhaps they wanted us to think they were weak. The truth hit Zethrak like a physical blow. The humans had been hiding on purpose. They had let the galaxy believe they were harmless, all while building weapons capable of destroying armadas. They had planned for this day. They had been waiting. "All ships," he ordered, his voice hollow with defeat. "Break off attack. Full retreat. Head for the system boundary." The command spread through what remained of his fleet. Velnoric ships began to turn, abandoning the battle, racing for the safety of open space. But the humans were not finished. "They're running," Lieutenant Blake reported. Catherine watched the enemy fleet scatter. She could order a full pursuit. She could destroy every single ship and leave no survivors. Part of her wanted to for the arrogance they had shown, for the threats they had made against her world. But that was not who humanity wanted to be. "Let them go," she said. Doc Cruz looked at her with surprise. "Admiral, our job was to defend Earth, not to commit genocide. Let them run. Let them tell their leaders what happened here. Let the galaxy know that humans are not prey." She turned to face her crew, these men and women who had fought so bravely. "We've won. That's enough." The human fleet slowed its pursuit, allowing the surviving Velnoric ships to escape. Of the 312 vessels that had entered the Sol system, fewer than 80 made it out. They fled in disorder, their confidence shattered, their belief in Dominion superiority destroyed forever. Pilot Officer Ryan Torres brought his fighter back to the Resolute's bay, his hand shaking now that the fighting was over. He had survived. His squadron had survived, most of them, anyway. 2 pilots had not made it back. He sat in his cockpit for a long moment, staring at nothing, trying to process what had just happened. They had faced an alien armada and won. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in fire and fury. On the bridge, Catherine allowed herself to finally breathe. The tactical display showed green across the board. The enemy was in full retreat. Earth was safe. "Damage reports coming in," Cruz said. "We lost 11 ships total. Heavy damage to 9 others. But we held. We actually held." Catherine nodded slowly. Get rescue operations started for any survivors in the debris field. "Ours and theirs." "Theirs? We're not monsters, Daniel. We just proved we can fight. Now we need to prove we can show mercy too." Cruz smiled slightly and began issuing orders. The battle was over. But Catherine knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The galaxy had just learned about humanity. Some would fear them. Some would hate them. And some perhaps would want to be their friends. Whatever came next, Earth would be ready. 3 days after the battle, the Sol system was quiet again. Debris still drifted through the space where the fighting had happened, but rescue operations were complete. Human crews had pulled survivors from wrecked ships, their own people and Velnorics alike. The aliens were being treated in medical bays. Their wounds healed by the same species they had come to conquer. Admiral Catherine Morrison stood on the observation deck of the USS Resolute, looking out at the distant blue dot of Earth. They had done it. They had defended their home against impossible odds. But she knew this was not an ending. It was a beginning. The door behind her opened, and Commander Cruz entered. "Admiral, the Velnorix prisoners are asking to speak with you." Their ranking officer is a sub-commander named Vilas. Catherine turned. Vilas? She was on the flagship? Yes, she's been cooperative. More than cooperative, actually. She wants to talk. Then let's talk. Sub-Commander Vilas was waiting in a secure conference room, her gray skin pale and her yellow eyes tired. Guards stood nearby, but she made no hostile moves. When Catherine entered, Vilas stood slowly and bowed her head. Admiral Morrison, I thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Catherine sat across from her. You came to conquer my world. I'm curious why you want to talk now. Vilas was silent for a moment. Because I have questions. And because I think your answers matter more than anything else that happened here. Ask, why did you last live? Catherine raised an eyebrow. Would you prefer we had killed you? No, but I do not understand. Your fleet was winning. You could have destroyed every ship that fled. You could have killed High Overlord Zethrak and every survivor. Instead, you let us go. You are even healing our wounded. Why? Catherine considered her words carefully. Because killing you wouldn't make Earth safer. Fear only goes so far. If we slaughtered everyone who attacked us, the galaxy would see us as monsters. Other empires would unite against us out of terror. But if we show that we can be strong and merciful at the same time, if we prove that we only fight when we have to, then maybe we can find allies instead of enemies. Vilas stared at her. The Dominion does not think this way. When we conquer, we destroy. When we win, we take everything. I know. And look where that brought you. Your Armada is gone. Your High Overlord is our prisoner. Your Dominion just learned that its methods don't work against everyone. Catherine leaned forward. We're not like you, Vilas. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in peace. But we will never let anyone threaten our home. Make sure your leaders understand that. Vilas nodded slowly. I will tell them. I will tell everyone. Later that day, High Overlord Zethrak was brought before Catherine. He was still proud, still arrogant, but the fire in his eyes had dimmed. He had lost more than a battle. He had lost his certainty. You will release me? He asked. Double quotes, yes. You and your surviving crews will be returned to Dominion space. You will take a message to your leaders. Zethrak's jaw tightened. And what message is that? Earth is not your enemy unless you choose to make us one. We have no interest in your territory or your conquests. But if any Velnoric ship ever enters our system with hostile intent again, there will be no mercy. No retreat. No survivors. We will hunt your fleet to the edges of the galaxy if we have to. She paused. And tell them one more thing. Tell them the databases were wrong about us. We're not primitive. We're not weak. We just prefer to build instead of destroy. But when destruction is necessary, we are very, very good at it. Zethrak said nothing. There was nothing to say. He had come to Sol expecting easy prey and found a predator instead. 1 week later, the surviving Velnoric ships were released and began their long journey home. They carried wounded soldiers, damaged equipment, and stories that would change the galaxy forever. The news spread quickly. Somehow, word of the battle leaked across species and systems. A new species had emerged, one that had defeated the Velnoric's Dominion in open combat. One that had weapons no one had seen before. One that had chosen mercy when they could have chosen destruction. Lieutenant Samantha Blake spent her days monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The chatter was endless. Admiral, she reported one evening, I'm picking up signals from at least 40 different species. They're all talking about us. What are they saying? Everything. Some are afraid. They think we're the new Dominion, that we'll start conquering now that we've shown our strength. Others are curious. They want to know more about us. She smiled. And some are hopeful. Hopeful? The Volnorics conquered 17 species before they came here. Some of those species still exist, living under Dominion rule. They're hearing about what happened, and they're starting to ask questions. If the Volnorics can be beaten, maybe they can be free. Catherine felt the weight of that possibility. Humanity had spent decades preparing for war, never thinking about what might come after. But now they had a choice. They could hide again, retreat behind their defenses, and hope the galaxy left them alone. Or they could step forward and become something more. Over the following months, contact requests arrived from across the stars. Species that had been watching from afar finally reached out. Some wanted trade. Some wanted military alliances. Some simply wanted to talk. Earth's leaders debated endlessly about how to respond. Some wanted to stay isolated. Others pushed for expansion. In the end, they chose a middle path. Humanity would welcome peaceful contact. They would share knowledge and technology with those who asked honestly. But they would not join any empire, and they would not bow to any power. The United Earth Defense Fleet grew from 57 ships to over 100, then 200. New stations were built at the edge of the system, watching for threats and welcoming visitors. Humanity was still careful, still prepared for the worst. But they were no longer hiding. Commander Cruz found Catherine on the observation deck one night, watching the stars as she often did. "Do you think they'll come back?" he asked. "The Volnorics? Maybe someday, but I don't think it will be soon. They learned something important in that battle." "What's that?" Catherine smiled slightly. "That some prey is not worth hunting." She thought about the future, all the possibilities, all the dangers, all the hope. Humanity had spent its history fighting itself. Now they had a chance to be something better. Defenders instead of conquerors. Allies instead of masters. "They came expecting an easy victory," she said softly. "They thought we were weak because we hadn't spread across the galaxy like they did. They didn't understand that we were waiting, preparing, making sure we were ready for whatever came." She turned to face Cruz. "They came for prey. They found something else entirely. And the galaxy will never forget it." The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of mystery and danger and promise. Humanity had finally joined the cosmic story, and they were just getting started.